Marcus Thompson had served the British royal family for 12 years. At 34 years old, he stood 6 feet 2 inches tall with broad shoulders that filled his dark blue uniform perfectly. His job as a royal protection officer meant he traveled the world, always staying close to members of the royal family to keep them safe. Today was different though. Today he was traveling alone. The morning started like any other Tuesday in March. Marcus woke up at 5:30 in his small apartment in Windsor. He made himself a cup of strong black tea and toast with marmalade, the same breakfast he had eaten for the past 8 years. His uniform hung pressed and ready on the bedroom door. The brass buttons gleamed in the early morning light coming through his window. His phone buzzed on the kitchen table. The message was from his supervisor, Chief Inspector Williams. Emergency assignment. King Charles needs security detail in Edinburgh. Flight leaves Heathrow at 2 p.m. Ticket being arranged. Pack for 3 days. Marcus felt his heart race a little. Emergency assignments were rare but serious. He had worked with King Charles many times before. The king was always polite and remembered personal details about his security team. Marcus respected him greatly. Whatever was happening in Edinburgh must be important. He packed his small black suitcase with care. 3 dark suits, white shirts, black ties, and his off-duty clothes. His service weapon went into a special locked case with all the proper documentation. His badge and identification papers went into a leather folder his wife Sarah had given him for Christmas 2 years ago. Sarah had died in a car accident 18 months later. Marcus still carried the folder everywhere. The taxi ride to Heathrow Airport took longer than expected. London traffic was terrible, as usual. Marcus sat in the back seat, watching the city pass by through rain-covered windows. He thought about Sarah and how she used to worry when he traveled for work. "Promise me you'll be careful," she would always say before kissing him goodbye. He still heard her voice sometimes, especially when he was nervous about an assignment. At the airport, Marcus went to the special security checkpoint used by royal staff and law enforcement. The process was familiar but thorough. His credentials were checked 3 times by different officers. His weapon case was inspected and sealed with special tape. Everything had to be perfect when working for the royal family. The ticket counter was his next stop. A young woman with bright red lipstick and perfectly styled blonde hair looked at her computer screen when Marcus gave her his name and reference number. "I'm sorry, Mr. Thompson," she said, not looking up from her screen. "There seems to be an issue with your booking." Marcus felt his stomach tighten. "What kind of issue?" "This is an official government booking for royal security." The woman finally looked at him. Her expression was not sympathetic. "Your ticket has been changed from business class to economy. The person who made the booking apparently selected the wrong fare type. There's nothing I can do about it now. The flight is completely full." "Ma'am, I need you to understand something," Marcus said, keeping his voice calm and professional. "I'm traveling on official royal business. I have sensitive equipment and documents that require secure seating. Economy class won't work for security reasons." The woman shrugged. "I understand your situation, but our system shows economy class. That's what you'll have to accept today." Marcus showed her his official identification and explained again that this was government business. She looked at his papers but seemed unimpressed. "Look, sir, I see people with all kinds of official documents every day. The computer says economy, so that's what you get. Take it or leave it." Behind Marcus, other passengers were getting impatient. Someone coughed loudly. A man in an expensive suit checked his watch and sighed dramatically. Marcus felt embarrassed and frustrated. In 12 years of royal service, something like this had never happened. "Is there a supervisor I can speak with?" Marcus asked politely. "She's at lunch," the woman replied. "Won't be back for an hour. Your flight starts boarding in 45 minutes." Marcus had no choice. He accepted the economy ticket and walked toward the security checkpoint, feeling defeated. His phone showed 2 missed calls from Chief Inspector Williams. He would have to explain the seating situation later. The security line moved slowly. Marcus watched families with crying babies, business travelers talking loudly on phones, and tourists wearing cameras around their necks. This was not how royal security usually traveled. Normally, arrangements were made privately, away from crowded public areas. After clearing security, Marcus found a quiet corner near the gate and called his supervisor back. "Williams here," came the familiar gruff voice. "Sir, it's Marcus. I'm at Heathrow, but there's been a problem with the flight arrangements." "What kind of problem?" Marcus explained the ticket situation. Chief Inspector Williams was quiet for a long moment. "That's very strange, Marcus. I specifically requested business class seating for security reasons. Someone made an error somewhere. Can you manage with economy for this trip?" "Yes, sir, but it's not ideal for carrying sensitive materials." "I understand. Just do your best. The King's schedule in Edinburgh is tight. He needs you there by 6 p.m. I'll look into what went wrong with the booking." Marcus hung up and checked his watch. Boarding would begin soon. He bought a sandwich and coffee, finding a seat where he could watch the departure board. Flight BA 1442 to Edinburgh was on time. Around him, the airport buzzed with activity. Announcements echoed from speakers. Children ran between seats while their parents tried to keep up. Business travelers typed on laptops and spoke into wireless headphones. Marcus felt like he was watching a movie of normal life while carrying the weight of royal responsibility. His phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number: "Delayed departure. Stand by for updates." Marcus frowned. The departure board still showed the flight is on time. He walked to the gate counter to ask about the message. The gate agent, a middle-aged man with kind eyes, looked at Marcus with confusion. "I haven't sent any delay notices, sir." "Are you sure that message was about our flight?" Marcus showed him the text. The agent checked his computer system thoroughly. "No delays reported in our system. That message might be an error or possibly meant for a different flight. We're actually running slightly ahead of schedule today." This made Marcus uncomfortable. In his line of work, unusual communications meant potential security issues. He made a mental note to report the strange text message to Chief Inspector Williams. Boarding began on time. Marcus waited until his zone was called, watching his business class passengers walk down the jetway with their small carry-on bags and confident expressions. He thought about Sarah again and how she always said, "Everything happens for a reason, even the bad things." The economy cabin was crowded and noisy. Marcus found his assigned seat in the middle section, squeezed between a large man reading a newspaper and an elderly woman knitting what looked like a baby blanket. His legs barely fit in the limited space. The man beside him was eating something that smelled like fish and onions. Marcus carefully placed his small bag containing sensitive royal documents under the seat in front of him. This was not the secure storage he preferred, but he had no choice. He kept his feet positioned to protect the bag throughout the flight. The elderly woman beside him smiled and introduced herself as Mrs. Henderson. She was visiting her new granddaughter in Edinburgh. "First grandchild," she said proudly. "Born just last week. 7 pounds, 3 ounces. Marcus smiled politely and congratulated her. Mrs. Henderson reminded him of his own grandmother, who had raised him after his parents died in a factory accident when he was 8 years old. Grandmother Thompson had been strict but loving. She taught him about duty, honor, and treating all people with respect, regardless of their position in life. "What takes you to Edinburgh, young man?" Mrs. Henderson asked while continuing to knit. "Business," Marcus replied simply. He never discussed his real work with strangers, even kind elderly ladies. "Must be important business to travel on such short notice," she observed. "I can tell by your posture and the way you watch everything around you." "Military?" Marcus was impressed by her perception. "Something like that." Mrs. Henderson nodded and returned to her knitting. My husband was military. Royal Navy for 30 years. He had that same way of sitting and watching. God rest his soul. The flight took off smoothly, but Marcus remained alert throughout the journey. His training never allowed him to fully relax, especially when carrying royal documents and traveling in less secure conditions than usual. He watched other passengers, noting anyone who seemed out of place or suspicious. About halfway through the flight, Marcus noticed a man in a dark suit 3 rows ahead who kept turning to look back at the cabin. The man had been reading the same page of his magazine for 20 minutes. When their eyes met, the man quickly looked away. Marcus made a mental note about him. The flight attendants served drinks and snacks. Marcus accepted only water, maintaining his usual discipline about eating or drinking anything that might affect his alertness during travel. The man beside him ordered 3 small bottles of wine and drank them all during the short flight. As they prepared for landing in Edinburgh, Marcus felt his phone vibrate with another text message from the same unknown number: weather delay possible. Prepare for extended arrival procedures. This second message made Marcus even more concerned. The weather outside looked fine, and no announcements had been made about delays. He screenshot the message and prepared to report both texts to his superiors immediately upon landing. The plane touched down at Edinburgh Airport precisely on time. Marcus remained in his seat until most other passengers had left, keeping watch over his documents and equipment. Mrs. Henderson gathered her knitting and smiled at him one final time. "Take care of yourself, young man," she said. "Whatever important business you have in Edinburgh, I hope it goes well." "Thank you, Mrs. Henderson. Enjoy meeting your granddaughter." Marcus collected his belongings and walked toward the exit, still thinking about the strange text messages and the uncomfortable feeling that something was not quite right about this assignment. He had learned to trust his instincts over 12 years of royal protection work. The jetway was crowded with passengers moving slowly toward the terminal. Marcus stayed alert, watching for the man in the dark suit who had been looking back during the flight. He didn't see him anywhere in the crowd. As Marcus entered the terminal, his phone rang. The caller ID showed Chief Inspector Williams. "Marcus, where are you?" "Just arrived in Edinburgh, sir. Walking through the terminal now." "Good. There's been a change in plans. The King's schedule has moved up. He'll need you at the hotel by 5 p.m. instead of 6. Marcus checked his watch. It was already 4:15. "I'll get there as quickly as possible, sir." "Marcus, one more thing. We've had some unusual intelligence reports about potential security concerns in Edinburgh. Nothing specific, but I want you to be extra vigilant." "Understood, sir. Actually, I received some strange text messages during travel that I need to report." "What kind of messages?" Marcus described the 2 texts about delays that never materialized. Chief Inspector Williams was quiet for a moment. "That's concerning, Marcus. Forward those messages to me immediately. And watch your back until we figure out what's going on." The call ended, leaving Marcus with a growing sense that this assignment might be more complicated than anyone had initially realized. He hailed a taxi outside the terminal, giving the driver the address of the King's Hotel while remaining alert to everything around him. The taxi ride through Edinburgh gave Marcus time to think about the day's events. The ticket downgrade, the strange text messages, the nervous man on the plane, and now reports of potential security concerns. In his experience, when several unusual things happened in sequence, it usually meant trouble was coming. As the taxi pulled up to the elegant hotel where King Charles was staying, Marcus saw the familiar sight of additional security personnel positioned around the entrance. Whatever was happening in Edinburgh, it was clearly being taken very seriously by the Royal Protection Team. Marcus paid the driver and walked toward the hotel, unaware that the next few minutes would completely change his understanding of the day's events and his role in protecting one of the most important people in the world. Marcus walked through the hotel's revolving glass doors, immediately noticing the increased security presence in the lobby. 2 plainclothes officers stood near the elevator bank, and another positioned himself by the main entrance. The hotel staff moved with the practiced efficiency that came from hosting royal visits. At the front desk, Marcus showed his identification to the manager, a thin Scottish man with silver hair and sharp blue eyes. "Mr. Thompson, we've been expecting you." Chief Inspector Williams called ahead. "His Majesty arrived 2 hours ago and is currently in meetings on the 15th floor. Any issues during His Majesty's arrival?" Marcus asked, part of his standard security check procedure. "None at all. Everything went smoothly. Your room is on the 14th floor, directly below the royal suite. Here's your key card and the security briefing packet." Marcus accepted the materials and headed toward the elevator. The briefing packet contained the king's updated schedule, security protocols for the building, and emergency evacuation procedures. As he rode up to his floor, Marcus reviewed the documents carefully. The king's schedule showed meetings with Scottish government officials, a visit to Edinburgh Castle, and a dinner with local business leaders. Each event required different security considerations and coordination with local law enforcement. Marcus's room was modest but well-positioned for security purposes. The window offered a clear view of the street below, and the door had additional locks that had been installed for royal protection staff. He quickly unpacked his belongings and prepared his equipment for duty. His phone buzzed with a call from Chief Inspector Williams. "Marcus, I've reviewed those text messages you forwarded. Our cybersecurity team can't trace the sender, which is unusual. The messages came from a sophisticated spoofing system." "What does that mean for the assignment, sir?" "It means someone wanted to disrupt your travel plans or gather intelligence about your movements. We're increasing security protocols immediately. Report to the King's Suite in 15 minutes for a briefing with the full protection team." Marcus felt the familiar tension that came with elevated threat levels. In his years of service, he had learned that most security concerns turned out to be false alarms, but every threat had to be taken seriously when protecting the royal family. He changed into a fresh suit and checked his equipment one final time. His service weapon was properly secured, his communication devices were functioning, and his emergency medical kit was fully stocked. Everything had to be perfect. The elevator ride to the 15th floor seemed longer than usual. Marcus used the time to review what he knew about the current situation. Strange text messages, ticket problems, potential security threats, and an accelerated schedule all pointed to something more complex than a routine royal visit. The royal suite occupied the entire 15th floor of the hotel. 2 armed officers flanked the elevator doors, checking Marcus's identification before allowing him to proceed. The hallway was empty except for security personnel and had been cleared of hotel staff except for those who had been thoroughly vetted. Chief Inspector Williams met Marcus at the entrance to the main suite. Williams was a 48-year-old former military officer who had spent 20 years protecting the royal family. His gray hair was always perfectly combed, and his expression rarely revealed what he was thinking. "Marcus, glad you made it safely. We need to talk before you meet with His Majesty." They walked into a small conference room that had been converted into a temporary security command center. Maps of Edinburgh covered one wall, and multiple computer screens showed feeds from security cameras positioned around the hotel and surrounding streets. "Here's what we know," Williams began, his voice serious. 3 days ago, intelligence services picked up chatter about a potential threat to the royal family. Nothing specific, just increased activity among groups that have expressed anti-monarchy sentiments in the past. Williams pointed to a map of Edinburgh on the wall. "The king's visit was planned months ago, but we moved up the schedule by 2 weeks hoping to avoid any planned disruptions." Someone clearly knew about the change, though. "The ticket problem and text messages?" "Exactly. Someone wanted to either delay your arrival or track your movements. We don't know if this is related to the general threat intelligence or something more specific." Marcus studied the map, noting the locations of the king's scheduled appearances. "Have there been any direct threats or specific intelligence about Edinburgh?" "Not directly, but..." Williams paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "There's something else. The king specifically requested that you be assigned to this detail. He didn't explain why, just insisted that you be part of the security team." This surprised Marcus. While he had worked with King Charles many times, it was unusual for the king to request specific security personnel for assignments.
Did he say anything else about why he wanted me here?
No, but His Majesty has been unusually concerned about security for this trip.
He's asked more questions than usual about protocols and personnel. Something has him worried.
Before Marcus could respond, there was a knock on the conference room door. Another security officer entered and spoke quietly to Chief Inspector Williams. "Sir, His Majesty is asking to see Officer Thompson immediately." Williams nodded and turned to Marcus.
"Remember, we're operating under heightened security protocols. Stay alert, trust your instincts, and report anything unusual immediately."
Marcus followed the officer through the suite's elegant hallways, past rooms filled with antique furniture and original paintings. The royal suite was decorated in rich blues and golds, with thick carpets that muffled their footsteps. King Charles was standing by a large window overlooking Edinburgh Castle when Marcus entered the main sitting room. The king was dressed in a dark blue suit and appeared to be deep in thought as he gazed at the ancient fortress in the distance. "Your Majesty," Marcus said, offering a slight bow as protocol required. King Charles turned and smiled, his expression showing both warmth and concern.
"Marcus, thank you for coming on such short notice. Please, sit down. We need to talk."
They sat in comfortable leather chairs near the window. Marcus had always been impressed by the king's ability to make even formal meetings feel like conversations between friends.
"I understand you had some difficulties with your travel arrangements today," the king began. "Yes, Your Majesty.
Some unusual issues with ticketing and communication that the security team is investigating." King Charles nodded slowly.
"Marcus, I asked for you specifically for this assignment because I trust you completely. In the years you've worked with my family, you've always demonstrated exceptional judgment and discretion." "Thank you, Your Majesty. May I ask if there's something specific you're concerned about?"
The king stood and walked back to the window.
3 weeks ago, I received an unusual letter.
Not a threat exactly, but something that troubled me enough to increase security for this visit.
Marcus felt his attention sharpen. "What kind of letter, Your Majesty?"
"It was written by someone who claimed to have detailed knowledge of my schedule and movements. The writer didn't threaten violence but suggested that certain royal policies were misguided. The letter demonstrated an unsettling level of access to information that should be private." King Charles returned to his chair and looked directly at Marcus.
"The letter specifically mentioned this Edinburgh visit, Marcus."
"It mentioned details that were only known to a small number of people within the royal household and security services."
This information changed everything Marcus thought he knew about the current assignment.
A security breach within the royal household was one of the most serious scenarios they could face.
"Has the letter been analyzed for fingerprints or other evidence, Your Majesty?"
"Yes, but with no useful results."
However, the handwriting analysis revealed something interesting.
"The writer is highly educated, probably has military or government experience, and shows signs of being under significant stress." Marcus considered the implications.
"Someone with insider access who might be planning to use the Edinburgh visit for some purpose. Exactly my concern."
"And today's problems with your travel arrangements suggest that someone is actively monitoring and potentially interfering with security operations." The king leaned forward in his chair.
"Marcus, I need you to be my eyes and ears during this visit.
Watch not just for external threats, but for anything unusual within our own security team or staff.
Someone close to the operation may not be trustworthy."
This was not the type of assignment Marcus had expected, but he understood the king's concerns. Internal security threats were often more dangerous than external ones because they came from people with legitimate access and detailed knowledge of protection protocols.
"I understand, Your Majesty. I'll maintain normal security duties while staying alert for signs of internal problems. Thank you. There's one more thing."
King Charles reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small electronic device.
"This is a direct communication device that connects only to my personal phone.
If you discover anything suspicious or feel that normal communication channels might be compromised, use this to contact me immediately. Marcus accepted the device, noting its unfamiliar design. It was clearly custom-made for secure royal communications. Your Majesty, may I ask about tomorrow's schedule? Are there any events you're particularly concerned about? The visit to Edinburgh Castle worries me most. It's a public location with multiple access points and limited control over who might be in the area. If someone wanted to make a statement or create a disturbance, that would be the most likely opportunity. King Charles stood, signaling that the meeting was coming to an end. Marcus, I've always valued your service, but this assignment is different. I'm counting on you not just to protect my safety, but to help protect the integrity of the royal security system itself. I won't let you down, Your Majesty. As Marcus left the royal suite, his mind was racing with the new information. The king's unusual letter, potential internal security threats, and his own travel problems all suggested a complex situation that went beyond typical protection duties. Back in his own room, Marcus secured the communication device the king had given him and reviewed all the day's events with fresh perspective. The airline ticket downgrade now seemed like a deliberate attempt to isolate him from secure seating areas where conversations might be overheard. The strange text messages could have been tests to see how he would respond to disinformation. Most troubling was the possibility that someone within the royal household or security services was providing information to unauthorized people. Such a breach would require careful investigation without alerting the potential insider to the investigation. Marcus spent the evening reviewing personnel files for everyone involved in the Edinburgh visit. He studied photographs, service records, and recent assignment histories, looking for anything that might indicate a security risk. The files revealed nothing obviously suspicious, but Marcus noted several staff members who had recently experienced personal difficulties. Financial problems, relationship issues, or family crises sometimes made people vulnerable to outside manipulation. As night fell over Edinburgh, Marcus positioned himself by his room window to observe the street below. Hotel security had established a perimeter around the building, but Marcus wanted to watch for anyone conducting surveillance or showing unusual interest in the hotel. Around midnight, his attention was caught by a figure standing in a doorway across the street. The person remained in the shadows, but Marcus could see them occasionally looking up at the hotel's upper floors. After about 20 minutes, the figure disappeared into the night. Marcus made detailed notes about the observation and set his alarm for 5 a.m. Tomorrow would bring the king's most exposed public appearances, and Marcus suspected that whatever was being planned would happen during one of those events. Before falling asleep, Marcus thought about Sarah and how she would have handled the stress of this assignment. She had always been better at seeing patterns in complex situations. "Trust your gut," she would have said. "Your instincts have kept you safe this long." Marcus's gut was telling him that the problems were just beginning and that tomorrow would test every skill he had learned in 12 years of protecting the royal family. Somewhere in Edinburgh, people who knew too much about royal security were planning something, and Marcus was now responsible for stopping them without knowing who they were or what they intended to do. Marcus woke at 5 a.m. to the sound of heavy rain against his hotel room window. The Scottish weather had turned overnight, with dark clouds hanging low over Edinburgh's historic skyline. He checked his phone and found 2 missed calls from Chief Inspector Williams and a text message sent at 4:30 a.m. The text message was from the same unknown number that had sent the flight delay warnings: "Weather complications today. Royal schedule may require modifications. Stay flexible." Marcus immediately used the secure communication device King Charles had given him to report the third suspicious message. Within minutes, his phone rang. "This is escalating," came the king's voice, unusually tense for so early in the morning. "Someone is monitoring our communications and trying to influence our security decisions. I want you to coordinate directly with local Edinburgh police this morning. Trust only people you verify independently." "Understood, Your Majesty." "Should we consider postponing today's public appearances?" "No. If we change plans now, we'll never know who's behind this or what they're really planning. We proceed as scheduled, but with maximum vigilance." Marcus dressed quickly and made his way to the hotel's security command center. The room was busier than expected for early morning, with additional personnel monitoring communication channels and reviewing overnight intelligence reports. Chief Inspector Williams looked like he hadn't slept. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, and his tie was loose around his neck.
Marcus, we've had developments.
Local police intercepted radio communications last night that suggested unauthorized surveillance of royal movements.
What kind of communications?
Someone was reporting the king's exact location and timing to an unknown recipient. The transmissions used police radio frequencies, which means whoever is doing this has access to official communication equipment. This confirmed Marcus's growing suspicion that the security breach involved someone with legitimate access to royal protection operations.
Any leads on who might have access to police radios? Too many possibilities.
Current and former police officers, security contractors, government officials, even some hotel staff have access to emergency communication systems. Williams rubbed his eyes tiredly. We're essentially looking for a needle in a haystack, and we don't even know what the needle looks like.
Marcus reviewed the morning's schedule.
King Charles would first meet with Scottish Parliament members at the hotel, then travel to Edinburgh Castle for a public appearance, followed by lunch with local business leaders. Each event presented different security challenges.
I want to personally check the route to Edinburgh Castle before His Majesty's departure, Marcus said.
Good idea.
Take Officer Davidson with you.
He knows Edinburgh well and has been cleared at the highest security levels.
Officer Davidson was a 30-year-old Scotsman with red hair and a thick accent.
He had worked with Edinburgh Police before joining Royal Protection Services 6 months earlier. As they drove through the city's narrow streets toward the castle, Davidson pointed out potential security concerns.
The castle sits on a hill with limited access roads, Davidson explained.
Good for controlling who gets close, but bad for quick evacuations if something goes wrong.
There are also underground tunnels beneath the castle that date back centuries.
Some are known and secured, but others might exist that aren't on any modern maps. They parked near the castle entrance and walked the perimeter, checking sightlines and escape routes.
The ancient fortress was impressive but challenging from a security perspective.
High stone walls provided protection but also created blind spots where threats could hide. Marcus noticed a group of tourists taking photographs near the main gate. One man in particular seemed more interested in the security barriers than the historic architecture. When Marcus approached him, the man quickly put away his camera and walked toward a different area.
Did you notice anything unusual about that photographer? Marcus asked Davidson.
He was photographing the wrong things for a tourist. More interested in guard positions and access points than the castle itself. They spent another hour walking the area, noting potential problems and coordinating with local police officers who would provide additional security during the royal visit. Marcus felt better about the physical security arrangements but remained concerned about the information leaks that seemed to be compromising every aspect of the operation. Back at the hotel, the morning meetings with Scottish Parliament members proceeded without incident. Marcus positioned himself where he could observe both the meeting room and the hallway approaches, watching for anyone who seemed out of place or overly interested in the proceedings. During a break between meetings, Marcus received another call on the secure device from King Charles.
Marcus, I've been thinking about that letter I mentioned yesterday.
There was one detail I didn't share that might be important now.
What kind of detail, Your Majesty?
The letter writer mentioned having served in the military and feeling betrayed by recent government policies. The writing suggested someone who had devoted their career to public service but felt abandoned by the system they had served. This description could fit dozens of people within the Royal Protection Services, police forces, or military units. Marcus realized they needed more specific information to identify the potential threat.
Your Majesty, would it be possible for me to see the actual letter? There might be details that could help narrow down the possibilities.
I'll arrange for a copy to be brought to you before we leave for the castle. 30 minutes later, a courier delivered a sealed envelope containing photocopies of the letter King Charles had received. Marcus found a quiet corner to study the documents carefully. The handwriting was neat but showed signs of stress in the letter formation. The paper was high-quality stationery that could be purchased at many locations but suggested someone with attention to detail. Most importantly, the letter contained specific details about royal security procedures that could only be known by someone with direct access to classified information. One paragraph particularly caught Marcus's attention: the current protection protocols rely too heavily on technology and not enough on human judgment. A dedicated individual with proper knowledge could exploit these weaknesses to demonstrate the system's failures. This sounded less like a threat than a warning from someone who believed the royal family was inadequately protected. Perhaps the recent communication disruptions weren't attacks but attempts by a concerned insider to test security responses. Marcus was considering this possibility when his phone rang with a call from Chief Inspector Williams.
"Marcus, we have a problem. Officer Davidson didn't report back from your morning reconnaissance of the castle.
His radio is off, and his phone goes straight to voicemail." Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with the Scottish weather. Davidson had been with him all morning and had seemed completely professional. If something had happened to him, it meant the threat was more immediate than anyone had realized.
"When did you last hear from him, sir?"
"About 2 hours ago, just after you returned from the castle. He was supposed to check in every 30 minutes during his patrol of the hotel perimeter." Marcus quickly reviewed his morning with Davidson, looking for any signs he might have missed. The officer had been knowledgeable about Edinburgh's geography and security concerns. He had noticed the suspicious photographer at the castle. Nothing had seemed unusual about his behavior or responses.
"Sir, I recommend we postpone the castle visit until Davidson is located."
"I agree, but His Majesty is insisting we proceed as planned. He believes that changing the schedule will only encourage whoever is behind this to try again at a later date." Marcus understood the king's reasoning but felt responsible for Davidson's disappearance.
If he had missed warning signs during their morning together, other people might be at risk.
"I want to return to the castle immediately and search for any signs of what might have happened to Davidson.
Take backup.
Officer Reynolds from the London team and 2 local police officers will meet you there in 15 minutes.
The drive back to Edinburgh Castle felt different this time.
The earlier morning had been routine reconnaissance, but now Marcus was looking for evidence of what might have happened to a missing colleague. The rain had stopped, but heavy clouds still made the afternoon feel dark and ominous.
Officer Reynolds was waiting at the castle entrance with 2 Edinburgh police constables.
Reynolds was an experienced protection officer who had worked with Marcus on previous assignments. His serious expression indicated he understood the gravity of the situation.
"Any word from Davidson?" Marcus asked.
"Nothing. His last known position was the hotel parking area around 1 p.m. Security cameras show him getting into his car, but he never arrived at his patrol checkpoint. They divided into 2 teams to search the castle area systematically. Marcus and 1 police constable took the main tourist areas, while Reynolds and the other constable checked the restricted sections and underground passages. After 45 minutes of searching, Marcus found Davidson's police radio hidden behind a pile of maintenance equipment near the castle's gift shop. The radio had been deliberately concealed and was still functioning properly. This suggests Davidson wasn't taken by force, Marcus told Reynolds over their own radios.
Someone convinced him to abandon his equipment voluntarily.
Or someone he trusted took it from him, Reynolds replied grimly. They continued searching as the afternoon grew later and the time for King Charles's public appearance approached. Marcus was becoming increasingly convinced that Davidson's disappearance was connected to the mysterious letter writer and the ongoing security breaches. At 4 p.m., Marcus received a call on the secure device from King Charles. "Marcus, we need to make a decision about this evening's schedule. The castle visit is in 2 hours, and I won't put additional people at risk if there's a clear threat. Your Majesty, we haven't found Officer Davidson, but we also haven't found evidence of violence or immediate danger.
Someone wanted him away from the operation, but we don't know why. What's your professional recommendation?"
Marcus considered all the factors: the missing officer, the suspicious communications, the potential insider threat, and the king's desire to proceed normally. His training emphasized erring on the side of caution, but his instincts suggested the situation was more complex than a simple security threat. "Your Majesty, I believe we should proceed with the castle visit but with modified protocols. Extra security, alternative routes, and shortened duration. If this is a test of our responses, we need to show we can adapt while maintaining security."
Agreed. Make whatever arrangements you think necessary.
As Marcus coordinated the enhanced security preparations, he couldn't shake the feeling that the real test was still coming. Davidson's disappearance, the mysterious communications, and the insider knowledge all pointed to something more sophisticated than a typical threat against the royal family. The afternoon sky was beginning to clear as Marcus positioned additional security personnel around Edinburgh Castle. Whatever was going to happen, he was determined to be ready for it. But, in the back of his mind, he wondered if readiness would be enough against an adversary who seemed to know their every move before they made it. King Charles would arrive at the castle in 90 minutes, and Marcus still didn't know who he was really protecting the king from or what they actually wanted to accomplish. At 5:30 p.m., King Charles's motorcade arrived at Edinburgh Castle under heavy security. Marcus positioned himself at the main entrance, watching carefully as the king stepped out of his armored vehicle. The monarch appeared calm and composed despite the day's security concerns, nodding graciously to the waiting crowd of officials and photographers. As they walked toward the castle's main hall, Marcus noticed a familiar figure standing among the group of local dignitaries.
It was Officer Davidson, dressed in civilian clothes and looking completely normal. Marcus felt a surge of relief followed immediately by confusion and suspicion.
During a quiet moment, Marcus approached Davidson carefully.
"Where have you been? We've been searching for you all afternoon."
Davidson looked genuinely surprised.
"What do you mean?"
"I've been here preparing security arrangements with the castle staff since 2 p.m. I left my radio in my car by accident, but I thought someone would realize I was here when they saw me on the security cameras." Marcus studied Davidson's expression for signs of deception but saw only honest confusion.
Either Davidson was an excellent actor, or something else was happening that none of them understood.
"Davidson, Chief Inspector Williams has been trying to reach you for hours. Your disappearance triggered a major security alert."
"I don't understand. I followed the revised instructions that came through this morning."
The message said to coordinate directly with castle security and maintain radio silence to avoid interference with the new communication protocols. Marcus felt his blood run cold.
"What revised instructions? Who sent them?"
"They came through the standard security communication system around noon.
Signed with Chief Inspector Williams's authorization code. I assumed you received the same instructions."
This confirmed Marcus's worst suspicions. Someone with access to official communication systems was manipulating security operations by sending false orders to royal protection officers. Davidson had been removed from the operation not through force or coercion, but through convincing him he was following legitimate orders. Marcus immediately used the secure device to contact King Charles.
"Your Majesty, we have a serious problem. Someone is using official communication channels to send false orders to security personnel." "How serious?"
"They convinced Officer Davidson to abandon his assigned duties this afternoon by making him think he was following orders from Chief Inspector Williams. If they can do that to one officer, they can potentially manipulate the entire security operation." There was a long pause before King Charles responded. "Continue with the scheduled events, but assume all normal communications are compromised. Use only the secure device for updates, and trust only what you can verify independently." Marcus quickly briefed Officer Reynolds on the situation and established hand signals for communication during the castle visit. They couldn't use radios if the communication system was compromised, so they had to rely on visual contact and predetermined signals.
The castle event proceeded smoothly at first.
King Charles toured the historic crown room, met with local officials, and spoke briefly to gathered media representatives. Marcus stayed close, watching not just for external threats but for any sign that the false communication attack was continuing. About halfway through the visit, Marcus noticed unusual activity among the castle security staff. Several guards were receiving messages on their radio devices and moving to new positions.
This could be normal security rotation, or it could be more false orders designed to create confusion.
Marcus caught the attention of the castle's head security officer, a stern woman in her 50s named Inspector McLeod.
Have you received any unusual communication instructions in the past hour? We've had several updates to the security deployment.
New positions for the perimeter guards and changes to the evacuation routes.
All properly authorized through your London headquarters.
Marcus realized the manipulation was continuing in real time. Someone was actively directing security personnel into new positions, possibly to create vulnerabilities in the protection around King Charles. Inspector McLeod, I need you to verify those orders directly with Chief Inspector Williams using a telephone, not radio communications.
Don't move any personnel until you've confirmed the instructions independently.
While McLeod made the verification calls, Marcus stayed close to King Charles, who was examining ancient Scottish regalia in the crown room. The king seemed aware of the increased tension but continued his scheduled activities with professional grace.
McLeod returned 15 minutes later with a troubled expression. Chief Inspector Williams never sent any revised deployment orders. Someone has been using official channels to redirect our security personnel away from their assigned positions.
Marcus felt a mixture of vindication and alarm. His suspicions about communication manipulation were confirmed, but it also meant they were dealing with a sophisticated adversary who had extensive knowledge of royal security procedures.
How many guards were moved from their original positions? 6 officers, including 2 who were covering the main exit routes.
Marcus quickly assessed the implications. If someone had systematically moved guards away from key positions, they might be planning to create an opportunity for a direct approach to King Charles or to test the response to a security breach. Inspector McLeod, please return all personnel to their original positions immediately.
Use only face-to-face communication, no radios.
As the security adjustments were being made, Marcus received a call on the secure device from an unexpected source.
The caller identification showed Officer Davidson's name. Marcus, this is Davidson. Don't respond on the radio.
I'm in the castle's communication room, and I've found something you need to see.
Marcus looked around and spotted Davidson waving from a doorway across the room. He signaled Officer Reynolds to stay close to the king and walked over to Davidson's position. What did you find?
Davidson led Marcus down a narrow corridor to a small room filled with communication equipment. On one of the monitors, Marcus could see a display showing radio frequencies and transmission logs.
Look at this, Davidson said, pointing to the screen. Someone has been intercepting and retransmitting official security communications. They're not just sending false orders, they're recording real orders and modifying them before forwarding them to security personnel. Marcus studied the display, recognizing the sophisticated nature of the attack. How long has this been going on? Based on these logs, at least since yesterday. Possibly longer.
Whoever is doing this has been gradually modifying security protocols to create vulnerabilities. This explained the airline ticket problems, the suspicious text messages, and the false deployment orders. Someone had been conducting a systematic campaign to weaken royal security by manipulating information and personnel assignments.
Davidson, can you trace where these modified transmissions are coming from? I'm working on it, but the system is complex. Give me another few minutes.
Marcus felt his secure phone vibrating with an incoming call from King Charles. Marcus, we need to conclude the castle visit now.
I'm receiving reports of unusual activity around the perimeter. Understood, Your Majesty. We're moving to immediate departure.
As Marcus hurried back toward the crown room, he saw Inspector McLeod approaching with an urgent expression.
Officer Thompson, we've spotted an unauthorized person on the castle grounds.
Male, approximately 40 years old, wearing dark clothing and carrying what appears to be communication equipment.
Where?
Near the east wall, close to one of the old military positions. He's been observed monitoring radio traffic and taking photographs of security positions. Marcus realized this might be their mysterious letter writer and communication interceptor. I want him detained immediately, but carefully.
He may have information we need about the security breaches. Already in progress. My officers are moving to intercept him now.
Marcus quickly coordinated the king's departure from the crown room while castle security pursued the unauthorized individual. King Charles remained calm throughout the accelerated evacuation, understanding that something significant was developing.
As they reached the castle courtyard, Inspector McLeod's radio crackled with an update. Suspect apprehended near the east wall.
He's asking to speak directly with Officer Thompson and claims to have important information about royal security. Marcus felt a moment of hesitation. Meeting with an unknown individual who had been conducting surveillance went against all security protocols. But, if this person was responsible for the communication manipulation, he might also have information about additional threats or vulnerabilities. Inspector McLeod, I want the suspect thoroughly searched and secured before any conversation takes place. And, I want backup officers present throughout.
Understood.
King Charles, who had overheard the radio communication, spoke quietly to Marcus.
If this person is our letter writer, I want to know what they're trying to accomplish. But, your safety is my priority. Don't take unnecessary risks.
The detained individual turned out to be a former military communications specialist named Robert Crawford. He was 42 years old, had served 15 years in the British Army, and had been discharged 6 months earlier due to budget reductions. Crawford appeared nervous but not threatening when Marcus met with him in a secure room within the castle. Officer Thompson, Crawford began, I know this looks suspicious, but I've been trying to warn you about serious vulnerabilities in the royal communication systems.
By sending false orders and manipulating security personnel?
I had to demonstrate that the weaknesses were real. I've been sending reports through official channels for months about communication security problems, but no one would listen.
I finally decided to prove that the system could be compromised by actually compromising it.
Marcus studied Crawford's expression, looking for signs of deception or instability. The man seemed genuinely concerned about security issues rather than hostile toward the royal family. Mr. Crawford, your methods endangered the king and security personnel. Whatever your intentions, what you did was illegal and dangerous. I know, and I accept responsibility for that. But, Officer Thompson, the communication vulnerabilities I've exposed are real. If I could manipulate the system this easily, so could hostile foreign intelligence services or terrorist groups. Crawford pulled out a notebook filled with technical diagrams and security analysis.
I've documented dozens of weaknesses in the current royal protection communication protocols.
Radio frequencies that can be intercepted, authorization codes that can be duplicated, and command structures that can be disrupted.
Marcus reviewed Crawford's notes, recognizing the technical accuracy of his analysis.
The security vulnerabilities Crawford had identified were indeed serious problems that could be exploited by hostile groups.
Why didn't you bring these concerns to official attention through proper channels?
I tried for months. I submitted reports, requested meetings, and followed every procedure. But, as a discharged soldier with no current security clearance, no one would take my warnings seriously.
I finally decided that demonstrating the problems was the only way to get anyone's attention.
Marcus realized that Crawford's actions, while misguided and dangerous, had indeed exposed genuine security weaknesses that needed to be addressed immediately.
Mr. Crawford, your information will be reviewed by the appropriate authorities. But, you understand you'll have to face legal consequences for the methods you used. I understand.
But, Officer Thompson, please make sure they fix these problems before someone with truly hostile intentions exploits them.
As Crawford was taken into custody by Edinburgh police, Marcus reflected on the strange turn of events.
What had started as apparent security threats had turned out to be warnings from a concerned former soldier who felt ignored by the system he had once served. King Charles was briefed on the situation during the return trip to the hotel. His response surprised Marcus with its thoughtfulness and compassion.
Marcus, it seems Mr. Crawford was trying to protect us in his own misguided way.
While his methods were unacceptable, his concerns about communication security appear to be legitimate.
I want you to ensure his analysis is reviewed thoroughly and
that appropriate changes are made to address the vulnerabilities he identified. Of course, Your Majesty. And, Marcus, I want you to personally review Mr. Crawford's case with the legal authorities. If his motivation was genuinely to improve royal security rather than to cause harm, that should be considered when determining his punishment. Marcus felt a renewed respect for King Charles's combination of security awareness and human compassion. Even when dealing with someone who had disrupted royal protection operations, the king was concerned about fairness and understanding the person's true motivations. The remainder of the Edinburgh visit proceeded without incident. Crawford's capture had eliminated the communication manipulation, and his technical analysis provided valuable information for improving security protocols. On the flight back to London the next morning, Marcus sat in business class with proper security seating arrangements. The ticket problems that had started his Edinburgh assignment seemed like a minor inconvenience compared to everything that had followed. As the plane climbed through Scottish clouds toward clear skies, Marcus thought about the lessons learned from the unusual assignment. Sometimes apparent threats turned out to be warnings, misguided loyalty could look like betrayal, and the most dangerous vulnerabilities were often hidden within familiar systems. Chief Inspector Williams met Marcus at Heathrow Airport with updates on Crawford's case and implementation of new communication security protocols. Marcus, Crawford's technical analysis was remarkably thorough. Our cybersecurity experts confirmed that he identified genuine vulnerabilities that could have been exploited by hostile groups. His methods were wrong, but his warnings were accurate. What will happen to him? King Charles personally requested that Crawford be offered a position as a civilian consultant on royal communication security. Rather than prosecution, His Majesty believes Crawford's knowledge and dedication should be channeled toward fixing the problems he identified. Marcus smiled, thinking about Sarah and how she would have appreciated the king's wisdom in turning a potential security threat into an opportunity for improvement. 6 months later, Marcus received a letter from Robert Crawford, who was now working officially to strengthen royal protection communications. The letter thanked Marcus for treating him with respect during the Edinburgh incident and for supporting the king's decision to offer redemption rather than just punishment. Marcus kept the letter in the same folder Sarah had given him, alongside his official commendations and royal service records. It reminded him that sometimes the most important part of protection work wasn't stopping threats, but understanding the difference between those who meant harm and those who simply wanted to help in the wrong way. The Edinburgh assignment had tested every aspect of Marcus's training and judgment, ultimately teaching him that true security required not just vigilance against enemies, but wisdom to recognize misguided allies. King Charles's intervention had transformed what could have been a security failure into a strengthening of the very system Crawford had sought to protect. In the end, the Royal Guard's airline downgrade had led to uncovering serious security vulnerabilities and turning a potential adversary into a valuable ally. Marcus realized that sometimes the most unexpected challenges led to the most important discoveries about duty, compassion, and the complex nature of protecting those who serve the public trust.